We have discussed an incremental CRO. Now we'll be discussing LTRO. Normally, what happens if you can recall the quantitative easing? In quantitative easing, what happened that the government of that Fed Bank infused a lot of dollar under open market operation, right? In the LTRO, what happened that Reserve Bank of India give loans to the banks at rates of repo rate, right? As I already discussed that the repo rates are basically for less than 1 year, and the rate of interest is higher in case of periods, more periods, that means more interest rates. So government of India, this Reserve Bank of India gave loans to the different banks at the repo rate, but for the long periods. That means the banks were motivated, the banks were motivated to have the loans for long terms at cheaper rate. And that means they channelized those loans to the people, right? So this was basically LTRO, long-term repo operations. Long-term loans were given at the repo rates. That's it. So the objective was to inject extra liquidity into the banking system. And in the LTRO system, RBI believes that offering banks durable long-term liquidity at the repo rate can help them lower the rates they change on retail and industrial loans. Now, LTRO, when this facility was provided to the banks, it was observed by the bank that the banks were giving the benefit of the loans to the industrial houses. So they revises their condition of LTRO and came up with the concept of TLTRO, targeted LTRO. And they asked the banks that all such money have to be channelized to this NBFCs and microfinance institutions, so as to promote the financial availability to the uh, lower people who were in the lower brackets, right? Rather than the money going to the large industrialist. So this I have already discussed. Unconventional monetary policy. There's one term, forward guidance. Forward guidance is nothing but it's a pre-information by the central bank to the people that what can be the course of monetary policy in the coming future, so that people are well aware in the advance and take corrective action before time, right? So liquidity trap is nothing but imagine the situation if when quantitative easing took place, then at that time what happened that the federal bank infused a lot of money into the economy in US, right? Then the people in the US, what they did, they took out the money, right? They took out the money and they put that money or invested that money back into India, right? Because they were looking for more returns. This was the term was capital flight. Now, when that means the invest this money which was infused in US economy was not taken by the investor and injected into US economy, while the federal bank has given this money or injected this money into the US economy, assuming that the investor will take this money from the bank and invest in the US economy. First thing, if you talk at the same time in Europe, right? In Europe, what was happening? The people were not bringing money into the economy. Then European bank came up with the concept of negative interest rate. And in the negative interest rate regime, what was it? It was basically if you put money with the bank, then they will deduct, for example, 2% of the amount. That means if you deposit 100 rupees at the end of the year, the bank will be paying you only 98 rupees. That means 2% was deducted. So this situation was basically a situation in which liquidity was with the people, liquidity was with the people, but that was trapped into their pockets. That was trapped into their pockets. Why it was trapped into their pockets? Because the situation was deflationary, and these people were anticipating or pessimistic in the sense that they thought that if they put money into the economy, then return will be negative. Return on the investment will be negative. That means if they put money 100 rupee today, after a year it might turn into 80 rupees. Now the option of putting into the bank was also not there, because if they were putting money into the bank, then they thought they will get only 98 rupees, right? So in this scenario, the money was trapped, that is liquidity was trapped into the pockets of the people. That is basically liquidity trap scenario. That's it. Right? So liquidity trap situation is a situation in which interest rates are very low or negative interest rate regime and saving rates are high, rendering monetary policy ineffective. That whatever monetary policy are adopted by the central banks, they are ineffective. Right. So this is basically liquidity trap. So any query from monetary policy, you can ask if you are having any doubt in the monetary policy. Is everything clear from the monetary policy?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think somebody has asked question. Forward guidance. See, forward guidance is nothing but forward guidance is that the central bank is uh, giving you the insight of your economy uh, about the future. For example, if the situation is of recession, then Reserve Bank of India will be coming up with certain guidelines, do's and don'ts, certain advices, and they will be telling you that we are going through such times, and in the coming future we can face such and such issues. So be ready with that, right? So normally, if you see, have you seen Reserve Bank of India coming and telling you that in the coming future you will be facing these issues? No, these are unconventional times, right? For example, this practice is being practiced in west, right? There the central banks are coming and telling the people in case of any recession or all those times that look, in the coming future we can face such issues. So when I was going through bond yields changes in monetary policy committee, is there any relation? Give me some clearance. Okay, see, bond yields monetary committee decision. Bond yield is actually directly proportional to the interest of the people in your bonds, right? That means if the people are investing or the financial institutions, I told that when their economy is doing good, then people or even the banks did not invest in these government securities, right? Because they know that the economy is doing good. Then why we should go for the bonds which are having low returns, comparatively low returns? But when the economies are doing not good, then at that time the banks opt for bonds, right? So monetary policy. See, when I'll be discussing this thing, actually, if you talk about the relationship between bond yield and this monetary policy, there is conflict of interest between this monetary policy announcement and the bond yields, right? Reason being that Reserve Bank of India in itself is the custodian of the finances of the government, right? If you see that Reserve Bank of India is borrowing money for the government of India, right? On the other hand, it is announcing the monetary policy or taking the decisions on the monetary policy. So many economists say that for example, there might be certain times when the government of India wants to borrow the money, then it's a high probability that at that point of time, Reserve Bank of India can make rates cheaper, right? So that government of India can borrow the money at the cheaper rates. So this is the conflict of interest. But normally, bond yield and monetary policy are unrelated in the sense that bond yield is directly proportional to the interest of the investor. If the investor are more interested in bonds, or if they are relying on bonds, then naturally the returns on the bond will increase. And if they are not investing in bonds, then they will not be getting more returns. That's it. Right. Then we'll start with inflation. See, inflation, if we talk about inflation, inflation is, yes. So inflation, if we talk about inflation, inflation can be understood from 2 points of views. And 2 points of views means one is this monetarist. Monetarist, whenever you find the term monetarist, that means money. Simple. So if you are trying to understand inflation from the monetarist point of view, that means they want to say that inflation is all about the money supply. So they want to say that if there is more money supply in the economy, that means there will be inflation. So when we were talking about that during the time of Corona, many economists in the India were talking about debt monetization, or they were saying that it's better to print more money for the revival of the economy, or to create the demand in the economy. That was the so in this case, monetarists come into the scene, and according to them, if such money was infused or more money was printed, then as per the monetarist, there was huge supply of money in the economy, and that means more money was available in the economy that will give rise to inflation. So to understand that in a more interesting way, the idea is, for example, there is an economy, and in that economy there are 100 people, and there are 100 pens to be distributed, to be sold, and one pen costs rupees 100, right? Now each person is having 100 rupees, right? Now what happens in the, this is the first case, that means the cost of the pen will be rupees 100 per pen. In the second scenario, what happens that each individual was having 1,000 rupees. Now what happened? Each person will try to have more pen. So what will happen? The price of pen will rise, right? So it can go up to rupees 1,000, because the maximum money that a person is having is rupees 1,000. So why it can become 1,000? Because more money is following the constant supply. So if there is constant supply, and if more money is in there in the economy, then more money is chasing the constant supply. So that's why if there is more money and the demand and the supply is constant, that means the it can give rise to inflation. And inflation is nothing but the increase in the general level of pricing. Okay. So one idea to understand inflation is if the prices of goods and services are increasing. For example, if you purchase a pen of rupees 100, and after a point of time, if you are having it off for 150, that means there is increase of 50 rupees or 50%. So that means there is increase of prices for goods and services by 50%. That is inflation. Secondly, one thing more I want to, okay, it's not here. See, when you might have heard one thing, that when Corona was there, then there was, it was said that the GDP in one of the quarter reduced by 25.9. The GDP growth was 25.9. While in case of US, it was something 9 point something, right? This example I am taking to make you understand that how GDP or inflation is calculated in the Indian context, right? So whenever you hear that the inflation is 5%, right, or inflation in July 2021 is 4% or 5%, right? What does it mean? Or if they are saying that Q1 2021 is GDP growth is if 6%, then what does it mean? Basically, it means that you are comparing this with the previous year. This you are comparing with the previous year. GDP scale on year basis while US compared to previous term. Yes, I'm coming to that. So what happens in this case, not only in GDP, but in inflation cases, this calculation is basically we calculate with reference to the last year. That means this 4% is with respect to July 2020. And this is basically GDPs with respect to Q1 2020, right? So this you have to understand, because this was very much this issue was raised when the GDP growth rate went to 25.9, right? And it was said that Indian economy has gone to 25.9 while other economies are doing well. The issue is with the how these macroeconomic indicators are measured, right? So in Indian context, we are calculating, we are measuring them with related to the previous year, right? So, inflation simply means if the prices are increasing, or another can be if the purchasing power of currency is falling. That means if we see the example of that pen, so it was the pen which initially was costing rupees 100, and in the second case might be a probability that it was costing rupees 1000. So what happened? This 1000 rupees was purchasing the thing which was costing rupees 100 initially, right? So that means the value of currency is falling. The value of rupees 1000 becomes equal to rupees 100. That means the value of this rupee falls to rupees 1000, right? So this is how you can understand the inflation. So most popularly, if we talk about in terms of theories, inflation can be understood by two. One is monetarist, I already explained. Second explanation, and the more important explanation, is from the Keynes. Again, I'm telling you, Keynes is always talking about the government, right? Whatever you will talking about Keynes, he's always talking about the role of the government. So what he's saying, he is giving you three important reasons for that inflation. First is demand pull, cost push, and built-in. This is of less importance because it is nothing but another name of this cost push and demand pull. So this Keynesian are saying that the inflation is because either of the demand pull or cost push. What does it mean? If we talk about cost push, so what we cost push? Cost push is nothing but when we are starting with a factory or when we are producing anything, then we need factors of production. So cost push inflation says that if initially, for example, if you see this example, this is an example of balloons. So initially what happened in this case of balloon, everything is constant, and one of the input, that is factors of production, that is helium, is increased from $10 to $20. That is it is almost doubled. So because of that change in the input cost, The output cost of the balloon has increased from 5 to 10. This has increased because the input has been doubled, right? So if factors of production cost is increasing, then it also give rise to the inflation. So if you see the cost push inflation, what is its impact? Its impact is, if you see rising oil price, if the prices are rising, that means it is increasing the cost. So if you see when prices are increased, you will get costly vegetables, you will get costly food items, everything is getting costlier. If rising nominal wages, that means it's again the factors of production. If the labor cost is increasing, that means it is counted in the production cost. Devaluation, rising import prices, that means devaluation promotes your exports, devaluation promotes your export, but it increases your import prices. That means, for example, if you are importing oil, then oil will become costlier if your value of currency is depreciating or devaluing. So what happens that it will increase the oil price, which will ultimately fuel the inflation. Rising food and energy prices, right? This is explained. High indirect taxes. Indirect taxes, GST, if is higher, that means it is uh, increasing the cost. It is increasing the cost of the final products, which will finally lead to the inflation. Then next comes out to be demand pull. Demand pull means that inflation is increased because of the increase in the demand related to the aggregate supply, right? Because when I was telling you that, for example, that here, if you see this example, uh, the sneaker was costing rupees 100, but number of people have lined up for purchasing their sneakers. That means demand has increased while the supply is constant, right? Supply is constant. If the supply is increased, then might be a probability that it can compensate the demand increase in the demand. But what's happening here, that supply is constant and demand is increasing, so it is creating demand pull. So what can be the reasons? Money supply expansion, that I explained in the example of pen, that people are having more money, right? When people are having more money, then they are demanding more, right? For example, um, if you see the Indian economy, the profile of the Indian economy after 1991, middle class is increasing, right? So middle class is increasing, and that middle class is basically have given rise to increase in the demand, because more people have entered into the bracket of middle class, right? Then consumer expectations. The best example is mall culture, right? If you see, if you see in the cities, that you people are going to malls just for purchasing basic things. For example, you are planning to purchase shop from mall, but what happened when you enter the mall, you see that sale 50% free, 60% free, especially female, right? So what happened that you people forget about purchasing the basic things for which you have gone to the mall, and you start purchasing all those things which were not required at all, right? And when you are exiting the mall, then you recall that, oh, I have come for that particular thing, then you again went for the same thing. Secondly, if you see the mall culture, you will find that they are giving you more and more things, right? For example, big packets. That means it is also your expenditures are also increasing, right? So this is how consumerism. This is basically consumerism. Third is credit boom. Naturally, you might be knowing better that even if you are not having money, then your credit card is motivating you that don't worry, I am here, and you we people continue spending money. If you see our parents, our grandparents, if you see their philosophy, even if you are having your parents or grandparents, those people still don't prefer to have even the ATMs and credit cards. Those people even don't prefer to have the loans, right? Because they were so intelligent, or they were having so much of wisdom that they knew that these credit card and all these soft money, they are nothing but to lure you. Ultimately you have to pay the expenses finally. Initially it is just uh, luring you to purchase all the things despite the fact that you are having not money. So it is ultimately creating demand pull inflation in the economy. Growing economy, yes, because if the economy is growing, that means more and more people are being employed, and if more and more people are employed, that means they are creating more demand. Fiscal stimulus. Fiscal stimulus is nothing but the government is giving more and more money to the people, right? So if the best example to understand fiscal stimulus is when during the time of recession, it is said that Narega was one of the reasons why India didn't went into the recession, because the money in this Narega was creating demand in the economy. And it was basically Keynesian economy, that people were having money in their pockets, and that money was basically creating demand in the economy. So fiscal stimulus, for example, if you see Atmanirbhar Bharat package this time, so what was government trying to do with such stimulus? Government was doing nothing but government was putting money into the pocket of the people, and that money was basically creating demand in the economy. Built-in inflation. See, built-in inflation, I don't think that you will find this more commonly, but this is basically telling you it's a spiraling effect. It says that, for example, if price are increasing, right? If price are increasing, then what happens? The labor who is working, they expect more and more costs or wages to maintain their cost of living. When their wages increases, that means they are having more money, right? When they are having more money, that means it will again fuel inflation in the economy. So it's nothing but it's a cycle. It's a cycle, right? Monetarist view, it's already explained. It is basically telling you that if the money supply is increasing, if the money supply is increasing, keeping everything constant, real output constant, and velocity of circulation constant, right? That means you are assuming that you are just infusing the money into the economy, then definitely it give rise to price level, right? So it's nothing to remember this formula. It's just you have to understand that monetary says that if there is huge supply of money into the economy, then it will give rise to inflation. That's it, because more money is chasing the constant supply, right? Measures to control inflation. If we talk about measures, there can be three measures. First is monetary. Monetary means money supply. So money supply means that credit control. So whatever we discuss in the monetary policy, that means if we were, for example, if you talk about repo rate, so if there is high inflation in the economy, what RBI will do to the repo rate? Anyone? Whether it will increase or decrease the repo rate? Increase. Okay. And even for decrease the repo rate?
Decrease, sir. Decrease to maintain the stability.
Okay. If there is high inflation, you are saying that repo rate will be decreased. How many says that it will be decreased? What will be the impact of decreasing repo rate? Pranati Krishna. What will be the impact of decreasing the repo rate on
So
liquidity?
high liquidity.
High liquidity. But monetary measure, I want to control the credit. If high liquidity is there, Bhaskar, you are right. I am asking Pranati Krishna because you are writing decrease. Pranati Krishna.
Yes, sir. Because repo rate is inversely proportional to liquidity, na. Like
Yes,
that I
it
thought so.
is inversely proportional to liquidity. That means you are saying if repo rate is decreased, that means liquidity will be increased. But here I am saying that you have to control the credit. If you are increasing the liquidity, then it is not controlling the credit. Rather, it is credit is increased, right? So if you want to control the credit, then you have to increase the repo rate. When you increase the repo rate, that means the funds available to the banks will be costlier. When the funds available to the banks will be costlier, then bank will give loans to the people at higher rates. When there will be loans at higher rates, that means the people will demotivated to have the loans, right? So for credit control, repo rate is to be increased. What about reverse repo rate? What about reverse repo rate? Will it be decreased or increased for credit control?
Increased.
Increased. Just opposite, I don't get it. Whether it will increase or decrease, Bhaskar.
Sir, it will increase.
Okay. Bhaskar, increase or decrease? Okay. See, remember that thumb rule. Thumb rule was liquidity is inversely proportional to every tool. So if credit control means monetary measure means we want to control the liquidity. That means we want to reduce the liquidity. If we want to reduce the liquidity, if we can recall our this last, I think that in which I have summarized, if I want to reduce the liquidity, that means I have to increase all my quantitative tools. Can you recall that? That to control liquidity, reverse repo rate should be increased so that more money can be deposited to our bank. Very good, right? So that means uh, for credit control, we have to control the liquidity, and for controlling the liquidity, we have to increase every instrument, be it repo rate, be it reverse repo, be it CRR, be it SLR. Anybody having doubt in this? See, questions will be coming like this only. They will correlate all these things, right? What is expansionary? What is, oh, they will always correlate the things. So you should be clear with the concept, right? Demonetization of currency. See, demonetization of currency, as the government claims at that time that we are doing demonetization of currency so that we can control black money into the economy. So as I told you that black money is acting as a parallel economy in the economy, and it is basically the excess of money in the economy, and that excess of money is basically a type of monetarist reasons for inflation. If you are removing that money from the economy, that means demonetization will result into that absorption of that black money in the economy. That means liquidity in the economy will decrease. Issue of new currency. That means if you are uh, putting that black money out of the economy and you are issuing the new currency of high denomination, right? So it will result into less inflation into the economy. Fiscal measures, naturally cut in expenditures. It is clear if the government in, has reduced its expenditure, right? That means government is putting less money into the economy. Then less money will be available to the people. Right? Increase in taxes. Increase in taxes means, can anybody explain how increase in taxes will reduce or control inflation? Anyone? How increase in taxes?
It will automatically show effect on expenditure, cut in expenditures.
Okay. Yes, you're right. See, what happens that when you are paying higher taxes, simply your savings will reduce, or the income which can be disposed of will reduce. Because disposed of income, the amount which you can uh, spend is basically the total income minus taxes. If taxes is increased, that means you will be having less money with you to spend, right? Then increase in savings. Naturally, if you are reduce the person. Very good. Kirta Karnam. Reduce the personal disposable income. Very good. Increase in savings means that you are saving more. That means you are consuming less. When you are consuming less, that means you are creating less demand in the economy. Surplus budget means the government is spending less. Government is spending less. That means government is putting less money into the pockets of the people. Public debt. Public debt means if the government is increasing its public debt, right? That means why government is taking the public debt to put it into the infrastructure projects, right? Then it will create more demand in the economy, right? Then followed by if raise production, it's I think already it's clear. Rational wage policy. Rational wage policy means that if you are increasing the wages of the people, then it should be rational in the sense that it should be in accordance with the increase in inflation. If you are increasing the wages of the people very hugely, then it will create more demand in the economy. The best example to understand is when pay commissions are implemented, then it creates a lot of burden on the government in the sense that government has to give more money to their employees, and that money is basically a sort of extra money with the people, and they are putting that money into the market in the form of consumption, and that is basically creating demand in the economy, right? Price control. Naturally, when the best example is again when the prices are increased, then government came up with either rationing, for example, in North India, what happens when onion prices, pulses are costlier than government, what government came up with certain rules and regulations, right? Like they sell all these things through their ration shops. For example, they are using mother dairies for that, or they are coming up with special shops from which uh, people are being provided uh, things at comparatively cheaper rates from those shops. So these are certain measures by the governments. Wait. So controlling inflation means increasing the purchasing power. Controlling inflation means controlling inflation means नहीं nothing ऐसा नहीं है. It's not like that. Controlling inflation does not mean increasing the purchasing power. Rather, it means you are making things comparatively cheaper, right? Controlling inflation means you are making things comparatively cheaper, right? Because or you price control is equals to meet the problems, created by the shortage of relation to demand. Yes, you're right, Santosh. Right. So controlling inflation means either you are creating, see, you can go by both ways, either cost push or demand pull. So inflation, if you want to control, either you can, if you go by the method of cost push, that means you are reducing the cost of the factors of production. That means you are making the goods cheaper, right? So for example, if you are getting this food products costlier, right? So what government can do? Government can make them cheaper, right? Or what government can do, if you are going by this on the demand pull side, government can control the money in the pockets of the people so that they can create less demand, right? So this is how it works. Creating artificial crisis in supply of goods comes under cost push inflation. Artificial crisis in supply of goods. See, this is not, artificial crisis is not part of cost push, right? It's not part of cost push. Cost push is like, for example, if you see nowadays, you will find that everything is getting costlier during the after the pandemic, because everybody is saying that we are getting inputs costlier, right? That is basically cost push, right? Things are, for example, if you are initially you were having labor at 300 rupees per day, now labor is saying that we are demanding 500 rupees per day. That means that cost will be counted as an input cost, right? That is not artificial crisis. So if you talk about impact of high inflation, high inflation, we will talk about the winners and losers and advantages and all these things. So first thing, that analyze all these situations, because many a times it has been observed UPSC is asking questions between the lines. There was one question which was asked in this question was asked in UPSC, right? So if you see winners, who are the winners in case of high inflation? Workers with strong wage bargaining power. So if you see that people who are employed with the government organization or whose salaries are having the component of dearness allowance, right? So what happens? The salaries of these people are linked to the consumer price index. So when inflation is increased, automatically their salaries increased, right? So increase in their salaries is comparatively more in comparison to increase in their expenses, right? Second, debtors if real interest rates are negative. This you have to read in association with this thing. Now this you have to understand. If you have taken loan from somebody, right? If you have taken loan and you are paying an EMI of 20,000 rupees, right? And this you are, the inflation has increased after 5 years. If we are talking about 5 years, the inflation is consistently increasing. So imagine this is 2015, you were paying EMI of 20,000, and after 5 years in 2020, you are also paying EMI of 20,000. Now imagine, is the value of 20,000 in 2015 equal to value of 20,000 after 5 years? Will the value of 20,000 in 2015 will be equal to value of 20,000 in 2020? Anyone? Will the value be equal or less or more in 2020? Yes, the value decreases. That means, value decreases means that this person who has taken money, that means debtor, right? This you have taken money, he will be in a profit, while this person who has given loan will be in losses. This is what it is saying. Debtors, right? The person who has taken loan, right, is winner if real interest rates are negative, right? While lenders if real interest rates are negative, right? Producer if prices rise faster than cost, it is simple because if the price rise are increasing more, that means he is having more income, right? Losers, if you talk about losers, retired on fixed income. So many times you, if you see the newspapers that whenever this interest rates are rising, the people who are retired, because the people who are retired are not having incomes and their incomes are not associated with to any dearness allowance. So whenever inflation is increasing, that means they have to uh, give more money to have the constant things, and that's why they feel they are losers. Savers if real returns are negative. To understand this, for example, if you are if you did an FD and you are getting 6% of return on FD, and if consumer price index in the economy is uh, 5%, then the effective interest you are getting is 6 minus 5. Remind it. So effective interest rate you are getting in an economy is 1%. Right? So nowadays, if you talk to the people, they are saying that they are having negative interest rates. What does it mean? Negative interest rate means that in if you are putting money into saving account, you are getting 2.5. And if you see that in the inflation is 6%, so 2.5 minus 6 is equals to minus 3.5. So if you are putting your money into the saving accounts, effectively you are losing your money. Your money is decreasing with the speed of 3.5%, right? This is how inflation plays the role. Then if you talk about advantages of inflation, inflation is basically a necessary evil. Remind it, it's a necessary evil. Why it's a necessary evil? Because when we were discussing that virtuous cycle, then there was a point we were saying that demand was basically creating the growth. So demand is necessary, but it should be within a limit. Right? It should be within a limit. And inflation targeting regime, I discussed in the monetary policy inflation targeting. I haven't, I think, not discussed inflation targeting. We'll explain it. It has defined this range as 4 plus minus 2. That means inflation should be in the range of 2 to 6. So if consumer price index is going below 2%, that means there is no demand in the economy, right? So this demand is necessary because if there is no demand, then to whom manufacturer will produce? So there should be a demand in the economy, but this demand should not be such that it is creating a mismatch. That means demand is more than the supply. So there should be, there's a defined threshold defined that the demand should be, the inflation should be within the range of 2 to 6% CPI. So it says that moderate inflation enables economic growth. Moderate inflation allows adjustment of real wages. Moderate inflation allows adjustment of prices. Inflation is better than deflation. That means if there is negative demand, that means if there is recession, that means there is no demand. If there is no demand in the economy, that means economy is not growing at all. So inflation is a necessary evil. Disadvantages: create uncertainty and lower investment. See, if your inflation is increasing, it's consistently increasing, it's more than 6%, 8%, 10%. That means your value of investment is eroding. As I said that Okay, effective return on the investment is return minus inflation rate, right? So if it is consistently increasing, so that means it is increasing the returns. It is unstabilizing your returns. Your returns are unstable, right? That means it is basically eroding. It is basically eroding your investments. High inflation often leads to lower growth and less stability, right? I explained because your investments are being eroded. Reduces international competitiveness. See what happens when your products are costlier. When your products are costlier, that means there will be comparatively less demand of your products in comparison to the other producers. Then to reduce inflation can lead to recession. That means if inflation is high and you are taking steps to reduce the inflation, that means you will ultimately uh, reducing the demand, and reducing the demand means you are creating the recession in the economy. Fall in value of savings, I already explained. That means it is eroding your savings if wages don't keep up lower real wages, right? Lower real wages, that means okay, the money, for example, if you the people who are casual workers, right, they are earning 300 rupees per day, and if inflation is increasing, what happens that effectively their wages are lowered, right? Because their wages are being eroded by the inflation in the economy. Here, these are types of inflation. It's just for understanding. I don't think that UPSC is going to ask. Creeping inflation when it is very less and it is required in an economy, less than 3% per annum. Don't go for this 3% or 4%. You will find in many books 4%. Somewhere you will find that it is 5%. But yes, it's very slow, and that's why it is creeping. It is safe and essential for economic growth. Walking or trotting means it is within the single digit. That means 3 to 10. It has not entered the double digit, right? So it is a warning to the government that either you take measures to control the inflation, otherwise this walking inflation can be converted into running inflation, right? 10 to 20, and it has not limits, right? It has no limits. It can uh, uh, go out of control, right? And it can lead to hyperinflation. Hyperinflation or galloping inflation, in this situation, there is no limit to the rate of inflation. And the best example to understand is Zimbabwe, right? Where the value of a rupee is not there and every day it is changing. And in this case of hyperinflation or galloping inflation, your monetary system collapses. The system cannot do anything because the purchasing power of money has reduced substantially. And to understand it, in social media, you might have seen the videos that in Zimbabwe, what was happening that the people were carrying loads of money and were coming up with 1 kg of potato and tomato. Right? So this is the situation in case of hyperinflated economies. Talking about stagflation, this you have to understand. It comprises of two terms, stagnation and inflation. Inflation, stagnation is a situation of the economy in which it is characterized by stagnation. That is, there is no growth at all, or the growth is very minimum, right? It is characterized by unemployment. Huge unemployment is there. It is characterized by weak demand. There is no demand in the economy. So these three characteristics are of stagnation in the economy. If you add inflation in it, right, it becomes stagflation. This situation is very alarming for the economies. It means that the economies are unstable at this time, because stagnation already means that the people are not growing at all. People are not having money. That's why they are not creating demand. And more than that, whatever they are in need of, for example, if they are if they're going for market for having the bread on basic items, and that item has become costlier despite the fact that they are not having incomes, right? So this is very bad situation. And if you talk about 1990s, we faced this situation. And prior to corona, even many economists were saying that India entered into stagflation, right? And if you talk about during that 2008 recession, countries were said to be in the stagflation zone, right? Okay, Google one thing, Goldilocks zone. Google it. I'll ask you tomorrow. What is Goldilocks zone with reference to the economy? Actually, this term was used by Raghuram Rajan for the Indian economy during the time of recession. Right? This term was used by him, and this term was asked by UPSC only after he quoted Indian economy in the Goldilocks zone. So this is all about for today.